So, welcome to the St. Patrick's Day edition of the Kubernetes Community Meetup. This is public and recorded. Everything you say will be saved for posterity and published on the internet to be shaming you with later, so understand that.
So no Lucky Charms jokes?
Depends on how much you'd like them to be repeated to you later.
Yeah. Then I'll keep quiet.
All right, so this morning we have a reasonably full agenda. We've got a demo from StackPointCloud showing us some work they've been doing on the Kubernetes community portal. We get to talk for a moment or two about 1.2 because, of course, it is free. It has been released. Press releases will go out today if they have not already. I think it's scheduled for noon. Etc. And then we'll talk about 1.3, and then if there's time, we'll do quick SIG report outs if anybody hasn't covered what they wanted to already. And we'll move on to scheduling and planning for next week. All right, so Ariel and Matt, let's see what you guys have been working on.
All right, so I can share my screen. Let's see. All right, let me get back to the home page here. So, hello everybody. Like Matt said, or Sarah said, Ariel, and we have Matt on the line. He's another one of the we're both co-founders at StackPointCloud. We also have Matt Finnegan from Berlin. He's the developer that's been working with us on this project. A little bit about us on the services side of the operation. We have been building communities for infrastructure as a service providers. We've also been working with Kubernetes, hosting a lot of the meetups around the country and also in Berlin. And we saw a need for the community, and so we've been putting one together since it's kind of very much in our wheelhouse with the things we do. I'm going to toggle between a couple of things today. I'm going to toggle between the wireframes, kind of show you the direction where we're going and we should arrive at in the next couple of weeks. And then I'll also walk you through the app and give you a sense of where we are in development with it. And at any point, feel free to either pause, to stop me, and if you have a question, or you can feel free to reach out to us outside of this meeting by emailing us at community@stackpointcloud.com. So without further ado, I'll just dig into this. Can I get an affirmative from somebody? Matt, can you see my screen?
Yep, I can see it.
All right, great. So this is the landing page. The design is very much inspired by the material design spec. It seemed appropriate given the work we were doing here. So it was a good opportunity, a fun opportunity to kind of dig into that a little bit deeper. Just the head, there's a couple different sections. There's the learn section where we're going to focus on tutorials, right? So the community will be able to submit tutorials, and we'll go ahead and there'll be some controls because we'll want, that's a more curated kind of experience for users and so, or for visitors. And so that's what that'll look like. And here we'll also have a forum section where the community can kind of engage with one another, and there's a little bit less controls over it. We are building some ways to flag information into that, and we'll get a little bit more into that. The events section, so one of the things is to kind of aggregate all the things that are happening in the community as it grows around the globe. I saw a cool graphic from KubeCon that mapped all the meetups around the world. It's impressive. And then last but not least, we have the tools section, which is something we keep hearing from the community is an important need, right? Like, what are the tools that exist in the ecosystem that will make it easier for me to embrace Kubernetes and the related technology. So let me show you what that looks like right now. This is all running locally right now, but we have the home page, we have the learn section, ask, and the attend. The list views, let me show you what that will look like longer term. So pretty standard stuff. Users are going to be able to come in here, enter a couple search terms, and we'll dynamically filter the list. Right now I'm logged in as an admin, so I have the additional functionality of being able to publish and unpublish content. So let me walk you through adding something, and the screen. Again, this screen is kind of in progress. I'll quickly copy and paste some stuff. In the content area, we're going to allow for Markdown. And I can quickly kind of go here and add, see the preview. We'll have a tagging mechanism so users can come in and add tagging. And then also complexity, right? Is this kind of beginner level, medium, or advanced task? Hit save. Again, here it is in my unpublished section. When I click published, we'll pop it over here, and there it is. Users can come in and they can add my comment, and it'll show up. I think it's there. The demo gods are failing me. Notice we also list the Kubernetes tags up here. So that's another thing. Will enable people to kind of filter collections using tags to kind of get at what they are looking for. Let me show you on the wireframe what the list view for questions will look like, and where, as you can see, hopefully it's pretty clear which questions have been answered and which ones haven't. And I think everybody's kind of familiar with that metaphor on the web, what a forum looks like, at least a modern one. And so let me show you. We have it here. And part of the motivation for this has been we've seen a lot of dialoguing occurring in the Slack channel, and we wanted a place to kind of trap this in, but it feels trapped in there. So we wanted to create a public presence where the community can go and it's searchable, and users can go and find it. Let me jump over to the events section. Here is one of the places where we're kind of in flux. I added an event, and I'll skip over what it looks like. This is a detail event, but we're going to differentiate between like recurring events like meetups and then like one-time events like KubeCon. And so this is the screen for adding that one-time event. One of the some of the functionality we're building into this is the ability to subscribe to an iCal feed, which Meetup provides. And so then once we set up your event once, we'll continually, as you announce events and they become public on the web, we'll populate this. So we'll always have kind of a catalog of the latest and greatest happening. Last but not least, we have the tools section. There's nothing in there right now. Let me see if I can, let me pull this up. There's the tools. But we're fleshing out the design here, but ultimately it's going to be a collection of tools from the community. As with the other sections, we are going to encourage the community to participate and submit items to this. And so, yeah. That's what we've been busy working on. Matt, is there anything to add to that?
Only just kind of when we expect to have it done over the next few weeks.
Yes, in the next couple of weeks. Finnegan can probably speak a little better to that since he's doing all the heavy lifting on it. But yeah, we're in the process of kind of refining some of the interactions and adding some of the polish. But we are definitely on the final mile, as it were.
And we've gotten some emails from various people with already pre-existing tools out there that will begin to populate into this once we have it in production. And so we'll do some pre-population with some content and tools with various people we've spoken to. Like Kelsey has offered to. Well, Kelsey told us we could just rip off all of his stuff out of his repo and post it in. So we'll be doing things like that.
Yeah. So if you want to participate, if you want to help contribute, you have feedback, again, community@StackPointCloud.com, and we'll get back to you.
Yeah, and we could also, for whoever really wants to add some comments to the design, we could also share the Envision URL with those people.
Yeah, we're using Envision for this stuff. If any of you are familiar with the tool, it's a really handy way to have a asynchronous conversation about design.
So one thing I just wanted to make sure we get in there is some sort of code of conduct for the forums.
Okay.
Make sure that that's up front. It's probably expected, but just make sure that we keep a sort of healthy community.
There is a published code of conduct within the Kubernetes repo, which you could probably just link directly to while saying, you know, be nice, etc.
Yeah, I think that would be totally fine if we could get something like that at the bottom of the forums page, at the something along those lines.
So maybe a footer with some privacy and then code of conduct type of URLs.
Yeah, something like that, and probably also worth having. I don't know what we want to decide on, or maybe it varies depending on tutorial, but some notion of the licensing, whether it's Creative Commons or whatever it happens to be. I think that's probably worth having in there as well.
Okay.
Code of conduct and license. Yeah, we have to define that.
Hooray for governance.
Yay! But otherwise, thanks for getting this stuff together.
This is super awesome. I actually have sent a couple of people your way or told them that if they already know you, they need to reach out in the last couple of days. So hopefully we can coalesce a lot of these independent efforts to try and make sense of the community somewhere and give a good space for this kind of thing to populate.
Yeah, I was going to make a similar comment. I think the thing looks absolutely fantastic. One challenge I see is we have docs in numerous places, and in particular we have Q&A type stuff in Stack Exchange, and I think the proposal is to have it here as well. And I don't have a strong opinion on how to do it, but we need to make sure that these things don't just become fragmented all over the place and duplicates, and most importantly that the community knows where to go to find what they're looking for, whatever that happens to be. It would definitely be worth putting some effort into that.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think we're ever going to replace Stack Overflow. I mean, it just has.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that should be a goal, right? Like that shouldn't.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing. That's not a good goal, because everybody goes there. It's better searchable. I mean, in terms of like Google search and things like that, it pops. It's just a better experience. So, I think this should be curated towards more kind of like, if you are a member of the Kubernetes community, this is where you come, rather than like if you're looking, if you're in the middle of a problem. Stack Overflow.
So why not just push everything to Stack Overflow?
I mean, I think that there's a difference, I guess, in some sense between forums. I'm not sure that Stack Overflow is a good source for forums. Right?
Tutorials being an example, right?
Yeah.
Like here you're getting a breadth of things that you can do to engage the community, whether it's the curated tutorial, which is a very specific thing, whether you're asking questions of the community, which is where Stack Overflow does, I think, a really excellent job, and we're not going to displace it. And then events and the tools. So I think what this is a space that's way more focused.
Fragmentation of the conversation is really not good. I think there's really good conversation here. I'd really like to see you guys write it down to say, okay, here's how you should think about Kubernetes with Stack Overflow, and that this conversation you just had about it should be somewhere in the page, part of the documentation that says here's where you go for what kind of.
And part of the moderation as well, I suspect, right? Like I think if somebody comes and asks a how do I do this kind of question, I think it's totally adequate basically to redirect them to Stack Overflow.
Yeah,
right? I think this is a great place to sort of have an archive of technical documentation of back and forth about like something like how do I do HA, or like I think that there's stuff that you can achieve in a forum that doesn't lend itself naturally to the Stack Overflow layout, but also is not quite a tutorial. That I think is like it's a conversation. It's almost a more persistent way of having some of the conversations that we have on the email list.
Yes.
And I think maybe that's the right way to look at it.
Cool. Thank you, folks. Anything else? All right.
Awesome.
I'll stop sharing then.
Thank you so much, Ariel and Matt. And I think that there was lots of good commentary about how to keep this from fragmenting too far. So we can potentially even look at pulling together a bunch of people that are working on collecting community resources and try to make this more unified thought. I'm thinking of Core Cube, and we found out about something called Awesome Kubernetes recently. And may all stand alone, but they may all benefit from each other as well.
Cool.
Okay. So let me find the window that tells me what our next topic is. Nope, it's not that one. There it is. Okay, so up next, we have the 1.2 release watch. Release 1.2 was cut yesterday. There are draft release notes. Brendan, do you maybe know, or Quentin know if the draft release notes have actually made it public yet? I know it was not an internal document.
Frantically unmuting. I do not believe they are public yet, but they should be shortly.
Okay.
That was as of when I was walking in and checking my email. That was what I saw, but they should be done shortly.
The notes, our notes here have a Google Doc, but that's not the final. That's the working edition. So we will get them published today.
Yeah, I believe they'll be published to GitHub today.
Fantastic. Any questions from anyone about 1.2 and where we stand? Documentation is coming over the next week or so. We are definitely pushing that through, but a little bit behind on timing. I know everyone community-wide has been pushing to get to feature complete. So docs are following in rapidly.
Just to clarify, Sarah, about the release notes,
Right.
the Google Doc is actually shared with the Kubernetes dev group outside of Google as well, and external people have been helping us fill those in. So it's not just Googlers that have access to the docs, they just haven't been published to GitHub yet.
Yes, thank you for clarifying. That was roughly what I was trying to say, but you did it better.
And the release here is being marked also by GKE upgrade. Is that the same as the release here in the community this time around as well?
No, that's not. We've changed that policy a while ago. We changed that policy, I think, even prior to 1.1. When we put it out onto GitHub, it's ready. So the 1.2 release is as ready as it's going to get. I mean, we will also go through a process of getting it to work in GKE, but that's not the statement of when it's stable that it used to be.
So Brendan, there was a tag in GitHub that was a point of contention around the 1.1 release, like that it got tagged GKE ready or GKE something late. Do you know if that tag has just been completely deprecated, or if...
I think that what was the concern was actually not the tag, it was the stable.txt that is up on cloud, like the version that we pushed to Google Cloud Storage. I have not actually checked to see if that has changed, but I might believe that the discussion was that it would. So
I knew that they were supposed to move together lockstep because
yes,
it was different.
I'm pretty sure we changed the release process such that it pushes that file as part of the release process. But again, I don't know if someone else online actually knows. But,
is the documentation explicit on that point, Brendan?
I don't think it was ever explicit one way or the other, so I'm not sure what would change. But I don't know of a documentation point that. I guess maybe I'll take another stand at this. It is marked as stable in GitHub. A long time ago, we didn't mark it as stable and latest until it was in GKE, and we're no longer doing that, right? So it's marked as latest. What I don't know is if we have also pushed the file to cloud storage. I suspect we have. And I don't know what documentation, Bob, you would want us to update other than the stable label or the latest label in GitHub.
If you can follow up, Bob, with whatever you think might be out of whack, I would be happy to chase it.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is the
That'd be
sort of
great.
thing that like a CI job over GKE would prove for us?
Not really. Like a long time ago when our ED coverage wasn't very good, it kind of hammered on it a bunch. But at this point, the only thing the GKE CI does is prove that the GKE parts of the system are working, meaning like we can automatically deploy clusters. It doesn't really prove very much about the other stability of, and a little bit about sort of some of the integration points, like GKE creates its own routes and things like that. But it doesn't really prove anything about Kubernetes stability at this point. The ED coverage that we run prior to stable release is sufficient.
I think that there are probably going to be a lot of people who will still see the GKE upgrade as the point where the release is considered actually stable, as opposed to, perhaps there's no difference at all in the Google process, but I still think there's a perception issue around this.
Sure. I mean, that's fine. I think that what we try and do here is, I don't think we're ever going to move to a world where we're lockstep, where like, you know, we mark the GitHub release and we push GK at the same time. We want people to get some mileage on it before they get auto upgraded and things like that. So, you know, I think that if that's the perception, then we can do our best to say like, hey, you know what, that's just not true, and work from there.
Thank you.
Yeah, Bob, just send me along any links or specific places that you think it's not clear, and I'll chase those as well. All right, so then the last thing around 1.2 is a great big thank you to everyone who contributed, tested, looked at, worked on, argued in SIGs, et cetera, because that is a huge amount of work, and collectively as a community, we want to continue to increase the speed and quality with which we are contributing to Kubernetes. So we will be going through 1.2 lessons learned in terms of potential 1.3 timelines, possibly at the end of this time, possibly next meeting, depending on how the timing bits go. And as I said, great big thank you to all of you. It's been a whole lot of hard work to get us this far. And here we go. So next up is, in fact, 1.3, because, you know, never a dull moment. We get 1.2 out the door. It's time to do 1.3. So I have on my list today that Redhat is going to talk to us about things that they're committing to. If there are other specific companies that want to talk about this, or as we look at more community product management opportunities, I think aligning around the SIGs is another great way to talk about what the community commitments are. So Don Chen is going to be able to, so Andy Goldstein is going to talk about what Redhat is committing to, and then Don Chen is going to talk about what the discussions and commitments and conversations for features and work over the next 3 months will be from SIG-Node. And then I think Bob is game to talk a little bit about what the SIG scalability is looking to do in the 1.3 timeline. And then if anybody else wants to jump in with things that their company or their SIG are wanting to commit to, that's great. We can get there in a couple of minutes. So let's start if we've got Andy on the line with Redhat. Andy, are you around?
I am here.
Fantastic. Go.
Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
All right, so there is a link to this document in the agenda document, so you can browse along at your leisure. This is a list of the features that Redhat is going to commit to working on for the Kubernetes 1.3 release. It is a large list, so we probably won't finish all of them, but we are going to work on all of them, and we hope to complete as many as we can. So these are not in any particular order, so I will just start at the top. So in Kubernetes 1.2, we are now running with setcomp set to the unconfined profile, and we are interested in making better use of setcomp now that it's supported in Docker. So we are currently discussing what that means, and we have Trello cards in our Trello organization for most of this, so feel free to look for those. But setcomp is one thing that we want to work on improving. Next up is having the kubelet evict pods when the node is low on memory based on quality of service tiers. So this is a way to, instead of relying on the killer to take action kind of at the end of the line, we'd like to preemptively and proactively try and get pods off of a node based on quality of service so that the node doesn't fall over. We want to improve the kubelet's integration with systemd. We've already had some work in 1.2 that got us closer to where we're hoping to be, but there's still a few improvements that we're looking to do. Next up is the downward API for resource limits. So we have a downward API for several items right now, but we'd also like to include conventions and standards for how to refer to things like the CPU and memory resources and limits that the pod author has specified. And this is useful so that people who are running things like JBoss or other application servers can have a better idea of how to set the Java min and max heap, for example. We want to continue working on deployments. So we have several items that we are hoping to contribute. These include things like hooks that can run during the deployment lifecycle process, custom deployment strategies, improvements to logging, and so on. We are interested.
Question: deployment of what?
This is the Kubernetes deployment resource or type.
Thank you.
Sorry. Next is idling and unidling. This is something that in the OpenShift world, in OpenShift Online, we take great advantage of, and we are interested in working on a proposal and, if time permits, hopefully getting some code up there. So it helps with overcommitting if you are interested in doing that. We have noticed in some of our larger scale testing that there can be thundering herd situations where you have a series of controllers and clients who are all attempting to reconnect, and there's a storm in the event of some sort of blip. And so we are interested in trying to improve the cluster resilience there. We started some work and got some work into 1.2 related to pod security policy, but it's not done yet. And so we're interested in continuing with that. So that's things like limiting and securing new attributes, like a read-only file system. Next one I think is probably of great interest to many of you. We are looking to start running continuous integration tests on at least RHEL with Kubernetes and Docker 110, or whatever the latest and greatest happens to be. And this will help give the community confidence that that Kubernetes can work on Docker 110 and newer versions, and also help identify issues if needed that we can address. Next up is we have an admission controller in OpenShift that allows the cluster administrator to set some defaults and some restrictions for where pods are allowed to run in terms of which nodes they can run on. And so we have the ability to set a default node selector for a given namespace, which we call a project in OpenShift. And we're interested in helping get that upstream so that the community can take advantage of that in Kubernetes. We have a couple of items related to storage. We are going to be working with the storage SIG on improving dynamic provisioning of volumes. There's an ongoing effort to do some refactoring of the internals of the storage code to make the code base just better. And we are interested in adding quotas for persistent volumes, given that that is a scarce resource. Next up is completing CNI plugin support for networking. And then I think two that I imagine a lot of people.
What do you mean by that?
I will have to get back to you on that one. That came from our networking team, and I don't know any more details. I apologize. I will flesh that out after this call. So we have two items related to pet sets. One of them helping whoever's interested in working on that to get pet set as close to completion as possible in 1.3, and then the core template code that would go along with that to support pet sets. Scheduled jobs is something that will be a follow-up to the job work that we were helping out with that's in 1.2, and so this is the ability to have jobs that run at periodic schedules. On the scalability and density improvement side, we're hoping to be able to scale out to 1,000 nodes at half max pod density, and we're hoping to help get up to 250 pods per node. And part of that will probably require some API server performance improvements, namely adding protobuf serialization as a replacement or alternative to JSON for a lot of the internal communications between, say, controllers and the API server. And then we have a couple more that are node related. We are actively working on getting support for cAdvisor to gather stats on per container file system usage when the Docker device or graph driver is device mapper, so support for that on RHEL. And that is part of a broader proposal that the Node team is working on related to disk accounting, so that we can better take advantage and be aware of the scarce disk resource that's available on each node, so that we aren't overloading a node or running out of disk. And then we have some stretch goals. We are interested in having a C group quality of service hierarchy, so that we can take advantage of kernel C group features in terms of scheduling when it comes to dividing up tasking between pods and containers that are best effort or burstable or guaranteed. And then we have a couple of security and policy related things. In OpenShift, we have an authorization engine and an OAuth implementation that we're interested in contributing to the upstream community as possible implementations that you could enable if you so choose. So that's our list. Do you guys have any questions?
That's an enormous list.
Yes.
Awesome. Yes, questions? Obviously,
I think probably most of us are sitting here with our mouths hanging open at the volume.
yeah, and we'll have to all collectively grok this, read through, probably ask a pile of questions. Ideally, the Red Hat team can integrate these in with the different SIGs that they work with. I know a lot of this work is reflected in the document that Dawn is working on around what the SIG-Node group is committing to in the 1.3 timeline. So this leads to a teaser for next week, and I'll have Joe talk about it at the end of this conversation if we have time. But the idea of getting also community product management going, in the sense of making sure that all of these pieces are moving forward in a way that gets us PRDs and gets us design docs and figures out what we need in order to make make this project move forward as fast as possible with the right things. So we can talk about that more. Are there questions for Red Hat, or are we going to grok and come back with questions?
Well, just a generic question. We got a bullet list, but if we want to understand in more detail what each of these bullets means, how does that happen?
So we do have we have Trello cards. We use Trello to do our tasking. And so we have cards that back the majority of the items in here. And I will go through and add those links as our cards are slightly cleaned up. Some of them have a little bit of cruft in them, but we'll have the links in there. And additionally, you can reach out to me on Slack.
GitHub issues?
Yeah, these are, for the most part, almost all of these have proposals in some form or another, or an issue that tracks them. Andy kind of summarized the list, and this is kind of a reflection of a number of different things pulled together, but we'll try to make sure that these are linked to actual issues so you can see the backstory on these.
Yep, perfect.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions for Andy and Clayton? Nope. Okay, I'm going to...
Actually, one question there. I think it would be nice, though, to actually sort of start to box these things up a little bit in terms of which parts of the project they impact. And then I think the list won't feel quite so, huge when you actually say, okay, well, this is work in this area and this area. And there's going to be a few things that actually cut across a bunch of areas, and that's going to be the stuff that's probably going to need the most coordination. So just one suggestion on how to organize this stuff.
Awesome. And I know some of this, for example, is rolled up into SIG-Node. Look at me doing a segue here. Hey, Dawn, are you on the meeting?
Let me first share the doc first.
Excellent. Hi, Dawn.
Hello. I haven't shared.
There you go. Excellent. Thank you.
So we start every release. Before we start the cycle, I will share the Kubernetes each release roadmap with the SIG-Node team and collect the information. I'm doing this one is just because a lot of the feature at the Node team, it is not super visible. And so I want to do the better communication with PM and also engineer and also our partner community. So that's why this is kind of the normal process each release we are doing. So in this, I put like the estimate this is still in the review process because we haven't looked at, I look at the current 1.3 roadmap for the Kubernetes overall, but and they feel this kind of things, but we need to talk to the PM more. And also I'm still waiting for some like the community inputs, and I try to reach out to like Redhat and also Huawei and the CoreOS and the Hyper, all our partner, and also the Intel, all those community partners, and but I haven't got all the inputs and feedback yet. So I categorize for this release, I categorize 3 areas: extensibility, reliability improvement, and also easy to use and the development velocity. I quickly go through each area here. So for extensibility, I identify the top 3, actually it's top four immediate attention area. And the first one, it is the redefined container runtime interface. So we already have during the Rocket integration, we have the first version of the container runtime interface. And over that integration, we defer to this, we are not well satisfied at that interface because for many reasons, one of the reasons is just every single duplication and it's not well modularized. It's very difficult to plug into the new container runtime, and there's no separation from the image management and the container lifecycle management and also the resource management. So it's super, super difficult. If you change any policy or you want to add new support of the new image format, you have to change every single container runtime. So we decided to, after Rocket integration, reach a certain point, we want to refine this kind of things. So now is the time. And so we also, under this big umbrella, we are going to finish the Rocket integration and also refactory based on under the new interface. We also want to, of course, we have to refactor the Docker plugin, and we also, at the same time, we already have the Hyper support, but we want to merge their support into our upstream repository. So all those kind of things we need discussing, and at the same time, OCI is going to release their first production release in June. So we need to have some ownership. We need our Redhat and our engineer to participate in that one and do some exercise. So at least we want to set the direction to what to reset their direction to what we want in the long term. And so that's why I put this P2. P2 is, that means this is not important. It's just we want more community involved. We didn't really allocate the engineer 100% driving this project. So another one, it is machine problem API. Today's Node API, we are lack of the machine problem API. We are kind of doing ad hoc support at node level. And if there's the kernel issue, if there's the file system corruption, and if it's a machine issue, machine hardware issue, there's no way to propagate those information. And you only see application failure. So for this release, I want to introduce the API. And I want to have like the prototyping to at least introduce some like the sample implementation, reference implementation of the daemon to detect the known issue, what we already know, and give us how we are going to integrate this, like the workflow, and how we are going to detect the problem and report and Kubernetes collect those problems and propagate those problems to upstream control layer, and how we are going to take action. So something like that. We also reach out to Intel because they are working on some like the hardware detection open source projects. They're working on those things. We try to partner with them and to have another daemon or some reference implementation there. So for each project, you can see I put the which company will hold that one, or the partner in our community will, and also try to assign engineer as the owner to drive those projects from the beginning to end. So another, the third one for the extensibility, it is we want to, for the CI weather, collect tons of the metrics. So some is really critical and used by the control plane. But tons of the stats and the metrics is not useful for the control plane, but it's super important. The stats it's really is useful for the debugging, monitoring for the customer, and also introspection when there's the problem. So but the problem it is Kubernetes cannot handle that many of the metrics, and it's hard to do the resource management, reasonable resource management, if you put all those kind of things into the default daemon. So we decided in the long run, we are going to have the separate monitoring pipeline. So that's the new project that we initiate for the 1.3, but we're still waiting for like the performance stats analysis to see the priority, to set the priority in the correct order. One of the major things is just because we already started this kind of the things in the 1.2. In 1.2, we introduced the new Kubernetes metrics API and the summary API, and we already see the huge performance gain through that one. So that's why we are going to do more research to see it is this problem. It is urgent to driving for the 1.3. So then another one is P2. It is the support alternative image format. It's just kind of like the long-term investment because we can't pretty much only support the Docker image through the Docker daemon and support the AppC image and through Rocket. But there's the other, many people ask for, how about the table? How about the jar file? So this is kind of like we want to do some like the experimental, how, especially after we refactor our container runtime interface, we separate image-related API and redefine the image spec API so we can see how much we can target. There's the one thing, if we can solve those one extra stuff just for specific customer, they already have that to resolve all those package dependency, all those kind of things. They may want to just, okay, please support this table. Those kind of things we could, I talked to some community friends and they said they want to attack this build Docker image on the fly and feature to help us to redefine this image spec and help us figure out the prerequisite to run the arbitrary table and jar file. And so that's kind of the P2, like the help needed from the community side. So another area, it is reliability improvement. So for the reliability improvement, so first thing, it is resource management. Resource management, there's many things, and I identified to prevent my node get overcommitted and affect all the running jobs and affect the Kubernetes performance and the Docker performance. I identified one thing is just out of resource handling. And from among all the out of resource, I identified two. One, it is the just disk, that's the top one. And second one is my memory. So for the disk, first thing we need still, it is improve our disk accounting. So one of the things is handled by Redhat. It is a disk accounting for device mapper. They mentioned that earlier. And another one, it is we need to do the big refactor about the disk management. So currently we have the image management, we have the container garbage collection, we have the image garbage collection, all those kind of pieces. And each of those control loop, it is asynchronized. There's no global, node level global way to view of the disk usage. So we may make the wrong decision. So we already started in the 1.2, we already started refactoring some of those disk management things, but it's not completed yet. So we need to finish this as soon as possible for the 1.3. Then after that, we can introduce the out of disk policy to the system. So another one, it is out of memory. We already have the proposal, and from the Redhat, we have the design review about that one. So now it is just we need to finish the work about this one. So another thing it is kind of the really important, so but it's relatively small working item. It is using switch to today's Docker client library. We switch to the Docker.io provide the client library. So then we can have the so in that one we can solve those negative compatibility issue. So also we can solve this. You introduce the error handling for all those kind of things, operations caused by Docker. And last one, it is really important. But it's kind of the hand-holding issue. It is we should configure our system and to enable node allocatable feature. We already introduced node allocatable in the 1.2 release, but we didn't roll out, we didn't configure to make that is really happen. So right now it's node allocatable by default, it still is node capability. So in this one, it's also part of the resource management. So we have to reserve some like the resource for the daemons on the machines. And so you won't overcommit the resource. So last one, it is kind of hand holding. Is this for just for the GCE? And because that's the QoS related stuff, we need to enforce like the CPU quota and also kernel memory accounting enable. I believe other kernel like the OpenShift, they already have those kind of things in the kernel. So we need to catch up on this in the GCE side. So next area is the ease of use. So I identify two top one. One, it is to simplify the node bootstrap. This is most for the production. And there's the many area we're still working on the identify each problem at node level. And of course, there's the many, this is cross-project, cross-team project. And there's the many things also required by the plan.
Hey, Dawn, we're running tight on time.
Oh, sorry. So I'm quickly finish this one. So then another one, it is just System D and Redhat our cover. And the last one, it is the node continuous integration test and the automatic Docker validation process, and also finish the node conform test coverage. And then security is already talked about by the Redhat.
Cool. All right, so any questions, or I suspect that we're gonna, again, have to grok a lot of this and then plan to do a pile of questions about all of this next week. Is there anybody immediately that has questions for Dawn? I'll take that as everyone's on mute or no. Thank you, Dawn, for showing us. This is super awesome, and I love that it's the integrated view of all the different pieces of community that are all different groups from the community that are working within the Node SIG. All right, Bob, did you want to go through a quick list from scalability? And we will.
Yes, I promise it will not be anything that thorough as what we just heard. So here, let me attempt to, can I share, or am I controlled from that?
No, you should be able to share.
You
should be able to share your screen.
All right, hang on a second here.
And while you do that, I'll tap dance for a moment, saying we have one more SIG that can share some of the commitments, and that's SIG-Controlplane if we have time. So hopefully we will have that space and do that. Otherwise, we can bump it to next week.
Great.
We are seeing your Kate-Scale weekly agenda.
Great. So this is, I think one of the things we need to do is assemble this into a separate document, more along the lines of what Dawn was just showing. So that's a TBD for us to do. But I thought and we really just today had a serious discussion in the SIG about 1.3. Some of the things here I think are the nature of scalability things like this is that they tend to cut across a lot of things, and some of the effort is really kind of testing and analytics oriented. But there are a few things here that I think are of general interest anyway, but probably worth just a quick review. Golang 1.6, etcd3, certainly. There's a lot of effort here around making sure that we have a good way to do test repeatability and share results. Some of this crosses over into the SIG testing group, which if not this week, perhaps next week, we should also have a readout from. I think one of the things that we really do need to, I think, spend a little bit more time on as a community is a better, I'll say, a goal on the scalability side, both in terms of nodes and number of pods, which is really the more critical thing. So we had a good discussion about that at SIG-Scale this morning, and I think we should try to put a stake in the ground that'll help everyone. Everyone working on feature work as well, to have the right context for the work they need to be doing. So that's pretty quick. I think I would certainly encourage anyone in the community to reach out to me, to Joe, to attend the lists, and as we get this list published, to give us more feedback and input. Joe, anything to add?
I think Joe walked off. He had a conversation. It looked like he picked up the phone and then disappeared from us. So,
all right, very good.
Awesome, thank you, Bob. Any quick questions, or we can work through any quick questions for Bob, or we'll work through specific issues and different SIGs that this stuff will work across and all of that over the next week or so. Okay. No questions, which means we have enough time, I hope, for a very quick update from SIG-Controlplane.
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can, David. Thank you.
Okay. Let me try sharing again.
So David has a document that is still being worked on by SIG-Controlplane, and that link will get updated in the notes here shortly.
Can you see the doc now?
We can.
Okay, great. So we're just going to go, I'll just go through really quickly here, and we'll share this within the next few days. This hasn't been fully reviewed yet, so it's a little risky to do this now, but we'll share this in a couple of days with the community. First thing is finishing some of the 1.2 work. The highest priority that we had to boot out of the release because we ran out of time. The highest priority there is finishing the metrics API, and concretely what that means is that you'll be able to write schedulers or controllers that use like node level usage information, memory, CPU, and so on, to make decisions like scheduling decisions, scheduling based on usage, or some combination of usage and request or something like that. So this will be ready in 1.3 timeframe. The metrics API, the work's been going on for quite a while. The node level part was finished in 1.2, but the control plane level part will be in 1.3. The next category, I won't go through all of the items, but we've been, working on improving cluster deployment for many months. Mike did some work in 1.2 with moving the command line flags to version config. We'll finish that up. Move that into config map so that the Kubernetes components are configured using the config map objects on the server instead of tons of command line arguments to each component. And I won't go through the rest, but he also has some plans for self-hosting and HA and kind of winding down the mounds of salt that we have that composes our configuration and simplifying all of that. The end result is something that will be very simple cluster deployment and bootstrapping. In scheduling, we have Kubernetes. Quentin is leading this effort. There's a few P0. And by the way, the priorities here are not the same scale as Dawn's. Dawn had very specific priorities, like P0 meant blocker. I don't know if you saw in her doc, like P1 meant we're definitely doing it or something. This is a relative scale. And you'll notice we even have things like 1.5 and 0.5. There's not a specific meaning for each thing. It's just a relative scale. So anyway, some of the initial federated control plane objects for Kubernetes will be in 1.3. The Redhat, Andy mentioned one of these job things, I think the schedule job. There's also a job workflow object for indicating job dependencies that we want to have in 1.3. And then there's an index job, but that's a lower priority. That may not make it into 1.3. Anything a lower priority than P1 may not make it into the release, you could say roughly. So let's move along a little more. There's rescheduler, which the Huawei folks are working on. By the way, there's a PX. A P question mark means not yet prioritized, and PX means someone outside of Google, someone in the community outside of Google is working on it. And so we didn't work super hard to figure out what is the priority, because we know it's work that's being done anyway. It's something that we definitely want, but it wasn't worth spending a bunch of time figuring out in increments of 0.5 how important it is. The rescheduler is very important, of course, and there's some folks on it from Huawei who are starting to work on that. There's some work on IAM, auth, and security, specifically around upstreaming OpenShift authorization, pod security policy, and some authentication improvements. Scalability and moving to etcd v3. Bob mentioned some of this. This is one of these areas that overlaps multiple interest groups in Kubernetes. So we don't have time to go into the details of what some of these items are, but like moving to proto, at least for the communication between Kubernetes components, is definitely something Bob mentioned, and something that we'll be doing in that Wojtek and Clayton and others will be working on for 1.3. We have some work around node management. So we have this disruption budget. There's a GitHub issue, this disruption budget abstraction that underlies any kind of node maintenance, underlies the rescheduler. So basically, SLOs for eviction SLOs for pods is what that basically means. And I won't go through the rest of those. And then lastly, we have some usability stuff. The most important one there is we've received some suggestions that we should do something around making it easier for people to understand why pending pods are pending. We have a little bit on that right now, but we can definitely do a better job of that. And sort of the flip side of that, which is for pods that scheduled, giving some explanation of why they scheduled where they did. Often people will say, well, why did you put this pod on this machine where there was already another pod running, or something like that? And so we want to answer both sides of that coin. Why did a pod not get scheduled? And if it got scheduled, why did it schedule where it did? And
gonna have to cut off, David.
Yep, that's the highlights. That's the highlights. We'll share this in the next day or so once we get one more review from the Google folks on it.
And because we are out of time, we'll have to take questions on the mailing list when David shares the doc, and I will send out summary notes as we get those sorted early next week, and then I will see many of you next week for the remainder of all the fun things on the agenda. Have a great afternoon.